So, hey everyone, my name is Mike Rogers. I'm at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and today I'm going to be talking about creating and managing sets. And this presentation really is truly an introduction. So I'm not going to go too deep here, but I think there will be enough, maybe some interesting content for those of you who do this a lot, that maybe there will be something new to learn. But for those who perhaps don't do this as much, I think there'll be a good kind of a baseline for learning how to go in and start creating a set, managing your sets, kind of learning the philosophy and sort of the makeup of sets and what they're used for. So let me do one thing here. Let's pull up my little window. So yeah, this is an introduction to creating and managing sets. And this is my son, Pete, who loves to fly fish with me. And this is him fishing in a stream in the Smokies called Thunderhead. And we went earlier this year up there right at the start of the fishing season and had a lot of fun. So I know that there are a lot of slides in here and a lot of screenshots from Alma, which are extremely boring. So I try to mix in some slides of like nice outdoor pictures in my presentation. So that's why you have a few of these in there. So we'll go ahead and get started. What are sets? So I've got a link here to documentation from Ex Libris in the Knowledge Center, and there is a lot of information in this document link. And what I wanted to do in this presentation was really to kind of walk you through the process of creating sets and kind of teaching you about some important aspects of set creation along the way. The documentation from Ex Libris I found sometimes is pretty hit or miss in terms of whether it actually takes you to it's like introducing a concept and then walking you through step by step of how to do it. It just is like a huge information dump of everything that's possibly there is to know about something like creating sets. But there's some really good stuff in the documentation, so that's why that link is here. My definition for sets, they're basically just collections of records, either created from search criteria or from a file. And with the search criteria, you can use either a basic or an advanced search. And for the files, that's basically like an Excel file that contains system identifiers or record numbers. There are really two types of sets. There's a logical type and an itemized type. And the distinction between the two is pretty important. For logical, just understand that the logical sets can be seen as like dynamic sets. And whenever you create a logical set, let's say you create a logical set today and you run it today, what you're going to see is the condition of the repository for today. But if you take that same exact logical set and you run it 6 months from now, the results that you get back will be the results of the repository for 6 months from now. An itemized set is just the opposite. It can be seen as sort of a static representation of the repository. So if you create an itemized set today, what you're going to get is a snapshot in time from today, and then running that set, the itemized set, 6 months from now, you're going to get the same exact results six months from now because it's a static representation of the repository. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I should have mentioned first, can everyone see these slides okay? And can everyone hear me okay?
Oh yeah, looks good to me. Sounds good.
Great. Okay, let me go back in here. So who can create sets? When I was preparing this presentation, actually, they made a change because I had a slide already created about the permissions and the roles and all of that. But for June 2020, there is a new way that determine who can create sets and who can't. Basically, anyone that can perform a repository search can save a query in order to create a set and to manage sets. But you can only do that for the content that you're allowed to access. So in other words, let's say someone has roles for electronic resources and can do like electronic resource searches and things like that. They can create a set for that. But if they do not have the acquisitions roles, they won't be able to create acquisition type sets. And there's a link here for more information about the roles. There's actually a whole long list in the document that talks about the roles and who can create sets and whatnot, but I didn't want to put that here because it's a lot of information. But in a nutshell, it depends on your roles. And if you can perform a repository search, then you can create a set for the content that you have access to. Now my screen is sort of frozen. There we go. So where are sets located? If you look on the far left bar, and if you have the access to the repository search, you should have an admin link over there on the far left. So if you click on that and you look under the section for manage jobs and sets, there's a link for manage sets. Mine has a little blue star next to it, which basically means that I've got this as a quick link. So it shows up in the top of my menu bar in Alma. I use sets a lot. I do set work probably at least on a monthly basis, if not a weekly basis. But that's why I like having a quick link for this. So that's where the manage sets area is located. And if we go to that, what we see, and this is my screen in our production instance, we see a screen for manage sets, and there's just a lot of sets listed here. They show up in alphabetical order on the list, and I've got 136 initially that show up. And what I want to point out here are these three tabs at the very top. The first tab is called My Sets, and these are all the sets that I have personally created in Alma. The second tab is called Public Sets, and these are all the publicly viewable sets. If you click that, you'd see a lot more than 136. And finally, the All Sets is everything, all of the sets for an institution. This can be considered like the kitchen sink tab. So there's also a bar. Once you have all of these sets displayed on the screen, there's a bar here that will allow you to filter the list to bring up a more refined grouping of sets. And there are two ways to filter, by content type and content origin. So looking at the content type, this basically is a list of all the different types of sets that exist. So if we wanted to look at all of the electronic portfolio sets, for instance, we could choose that option, and it would show all of the electronic portfolio sets that I have created. And this same filter appears in all three of those tabs at the top. There's also a way to filter by content origin as well. And there are only three choices there. I always use the institution only because we don't have community zone sets and we don't have discovery sets. I want to point out too that there's also a search bar, and it's possible to further refine the list of sets that appear when you go to the Manage Sets page. And with this option, you can search by set name or created by. And it's a keyword search. You don't have to have like an exact search to pull up the exact set that you're looking for, or sets. And also here, one tip that I kind of have, and I've done for years, is I don't know if it's good practice or not, but it seems to help me. I like to name a lot of my sets, not all of my sets, but some of my sets, just start them off with the name Mike, because I find this to be a really quick way to access those sets that I go back to time and time again. So you can do anything you want. I don't know if your institution may have guidelines for how to name these sets and keep them better organized, but initially, I think when we started with Alma several years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, we were naming them pretty generically, and we found out pretty quickly that it was a better idea to give your sets more descriptive names in order to find them down the road. So let's go ahead and just walk through the steps of creating a set. And here's one of my pretty landscape pictures to kind of ease your eyes from multiple screenshots in Alma. So here again, we're at the Manage Sets page. And you can see we're at the point where I've typed in Mike here in the search box and it's pulling up a bunch of sets. But what we're going to do to create a new set is you go to this link up here for Add Set. And when you click that, you get a drop-down menu with two choices, logical or itemized. And remember, this is real important. Just as a reminder, the logical sets are dynamic and they reflect the current repository conditions at whatever time the set is run, whether it's run today or in the future, 6 months to a year from now. And the itemized sets are static and they reflect the repository conditions at the time the set is created, not when it's run, but when it's created. Sort of like a historical snapshot of when the set, an itemized set, was created. So in this case, we're going to create a logical set. So just a couple of notes from this first screen. There are two screens that walk you through the creation of a set, and this is the first screen. The set name is mandatory, which is to be expected. And also adding a note in this note field. I do that a fair bit for mine because sometimes I forget what a set is for. And if I'm creating a set for a specific project or for a specific person, I like to put that in the notes just to have it in there. I don't know if the notes are searchable. Remember that search box that I showed earlier where you can search by name or by created by? I'm pretty sure that the note field is not part of that search. But I'd still like to have in the note field what the set is for. So that's something to consider when you're creating your sets. The field for private down there where it says yes, the default is always yes. And what that means is that if you leave it at yes, this set will be private just to you and no one else can access it or view it. I think it still shows up in the lists for the like the all sets list, but it's a private set and it can't be accessed by anyone else. I always change that to no. I don't really care who has access to my sets. And I trust that people don't go in and make changes or whatever. And if they do, they might ask me, or they can copy a set and make it as their own. But I always change that field to no. And also another thing to point out is that content origin down on the right side of the screen at the bottom, where it says institution only or discovery. I always leave that as institution only. There is an option to create discovery sets, and I've never done that, but I looked it up and it sounds like it's a way that you can create a set that also includes unsuppressed records from Primo VE or from the Primo VE index. I don't quite know how that would be useful or what we would use that for. So we've never really done that. I'm not sure if others have, and we can maybe talk about that at the end of this presentation, but that's what that's there for. So another important thing when you're creating your set is the set content type. And this is where you use this drop down to choose what content type you want. The options that are above that line are ones that I have used recently. So they're sort of like historical reminders of sets that I've created recently. And everything below is an alphabetical order of all the options that you have. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a physical title set. So I've got my set name. I just copied and pasted the set name into the description field. Again, that's another practice that I've done since we went live with Alma. I'm not sure if it's necessary, probably not, but it's something I always do. And then I've got just a quick note field in here. And my set content type is physical titles, private is no, it's a logical set, the status is active, and it's institution only. So the next step is to click next. And when you do that, you're going to arrive at the search screen here. And what you need to do in order to populate the set is to perform either a basic search or an advanced search. And in this case, we're going to perform an advanced search. And you'll see here that I've got some qualifiers in here. Essentially what we want to do at this point is I want to find all of the 16mm films, slides, and sound recordings, which are all material types. They're item material types. I want to find all of those that are located in Hoskins storage. So I wanted to do a search like this. This isn't really the type of search you'll do for all your sets, but I wanted to point this out because I thought it was an interesting discovery that I learned when you're constructing searches. And this would hold true whenever you're doing searches for sets or just in general. If you're doing an advanced search in Alma for a search like this, you have to format it and construct it in a certain way in order for the search to work properly. So what we've got here, it looks a little odd because you can see that I've got some AND clauses as well as some OR clauses for the Hodges Library Hoskins storage. And I'll just point out that really we want to look at this search as three distinct sections, because if we don't, the search is going to work incorrectly. So the way this search reads is that the first section up on top, we're saying find in parentheses, library equals Hoskins storage and material type equals 16mm film, close parentheses. So that's its own like separate search. And then I've got the OR clause here, or library equals Hoskins storage and material type equals slide, or, and the third one is Hoskins storage and sound recording. So doing that pulls up 466 hits. I'm going to go back here. If I did not have those two OR clauses for the library as Hoskins storage, and I put OR clauses, if I created this as Hoskins library equals, or library equals Hoskins storage and material type equals 16mm film, or material type equals slide, or material type equals sound recording, I would get more hits in my results. I would get all of the slides and the sound recordings from all of the libraries and not just Hoskins storage. I hope that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about that, or does that concept make sense? Have people discovered this on their own as well when they're doing searches in Alma? Is anyone there? I'm not looking at the videos here. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Great. Thank you. So yeah, that's why we do that. That's why we construct the searches the way we did, because if we don't, it kind of messes up with our results. So I've got 466 results here, and this is just a list of all the titles. I want to point out that over on the left, there is a facets section that if you just hover your mouse over that bar, it will pop out, and you can further refine your results this way as well. And there's also these sort options. There's a primary sort option and a secondary sort. And these are the ways that you can sort these. The options for primary and secondary are the exact same in both cases. There's also an option here to take your results from your set and kick them out to an Excel file, which is pretty nice. You can have a choice of exporting everything from your current view or all of the fields that would be available for the Excel export. And if you notice that icon, I don't have a pointer to it, the icon just to the right of the export to Excel icon, I've got a little green dot there. That shows that I've customized my view here. So anything that shows up on these brief records, for me, if I chose the export to Excel with the current view, I would get all of those fields that would export out to Excel. So finally, what you want to do is if you construct your search, whether it's a basic search or advanced search, you've got your results, you look at them, they all look good to you, make sure to save it, because I've done this many times where I just forget to save the the search, and it doesn't save to the set. So click that save button to finalize your set. And now we can see that I've got my new set here, the Mike eBUG test set, showing up in my manage set screen. And as with a lot of things in Alma, we've got these 3 ellipses here with more actions that you can perform. So in this case, we've got 8 different actions that are available. And I don't use all 8 of these. I just use a few of them a lot, and then some others on a more or less frequent basis. But let's just go through these set actions real quick. I'm not going to talk about every single one, but the 2 that I use a lot are the results and the filter set. So results, it's a little bit counterintuitive. If I wanted to go back to a set that I've created and tweak the search so that I get different results. If I feel like maybe I want to expand this a little bit or kind of take away some things that I don't really need, I would think I would go to the edit the set characteristics, but the edit screen just kind of edits like the title, whether it's a private set, things like that. But the results, you have to go to the results actually and display the results. And then at that point, you can change your search criteria if you want. So that's what the results is for. The filter set, I use that quite a bit because I find myself all the time creating sets and then further refining them with indication rules in the metadata editor. And this is outside the scope of our presentation today, but I want to mention this. Maybe I can do a presentation next eBUG or something to talk about how to filter and tweak sets using indication rules, because that is a super, super powerful and useful tool to have. So anyway, these are the 2 that I use quite a bit, results and filter sets. I know that there are catalogers out there who may find the catalog set to be super useful as well. If you have a set that's less than 200 records, what you can do is create the set, and then you can send that set, everything in that set, to the metadata editor for cataloging purposes and kind of tweak and fix and whatnot. I've not done that. I'm not a cataloger per se, but I do a lot of like data cleanup. But I know that catalogers can find that very useful. It's also possible to duplicate a set. If you don't want to go through the steps of like creating the set step by step, you can use the duplicate and then make tweaks to the new set as you need to. So last thing we're going to do here, let's create an itemized set from a file of identifiers. So let's say we've got this Excel file of MMS IDs or barcodes or OCLC numbers, ISBNs, POLs, etc. Can we create a set from these? And the answer is yes, you can. And I've got another link here that will point you directly in the documentation to how to do this. And it's not necessarily like a step-by-step of how to do it, but again, it's another one of these information dumps from Ex Libris that kind of tell you every aspect of possibility for this process. But I'm going to walk you through this real quick. This is back at the Manage Set screen. And what we want to do again is click on Add Set. And when the dropdown shows up, we want to make sure that we choose Itemized. One thing to remember, and what I've got here in my set that I'm going to create is, let's say we've got a set of MMS IDs in Excel. One thing to know is that if you have MMS IDs and you want to create a set from those, you can only create an all titles set. You can't create a physical titles or an electronic title set. It has to be all titles. I'm not quite sure why Alma is set up that way, but that's just how it works, and that's the way it is. So I've got all titles chosen as my content type. And I'll say too, I've got a sentence down here to refer to the Ex Libris documentation. There's a part in the documentation, it's basically like a big chart that shows you all the different identifiers that you can create sets from, whether they're ISBNs or POL numbers or user primary IDs and things like that. It will tell you all the different identifiers to use, and then the types of sets that you can create with those identifiers. It will also tell you, well, I'll get to that here in just a second. But again, we've got the alt titles showing as the content type. And then what we need to do is we need to add contents from a file to the set. And in this case, I'm going to choose the from file option. You can also use from analytics. And if you chose that, what it would give you would be a screen where you can choose from a folder a certain report that you've already got created in analytics with the identifier column in it to create your set. So this is my Excel file that I've got with my MMS IDs. I've got 25 MMS IDs in here that I want to create a set from. What I was going to mention earlier is that the column header is really important in this process. You can see that my field for A1 is MMS ID. That's really important, that it retains that same capitalization and the spacing and everything for this process to work. And the Ex Libris documentation, again, has a really good depiction of what these identifiers must be, what these column headers must be in your original file in order for them to work. And I'll just point out too that for your Excel file that you're bringing in, the maximum file size is 10 megabytes. So if you've got an Excel file with a column of identifiers, but you've got a whole bunch of other columns with other data like title or publisher or author or things like that, that's okay. It's just important that you have your identifier column in there somewhere. But if you've got a lot of data and it's greater than 10 megabytes, you might want to consider stripping out some of those other columns that have data that's not really going to be part of this process. So that's just a heads up kind of word of warning. So once you've added the Excel file, what you want to do is click Save, and that's going to launch a job to populate the set with the identifiers and the records from the Excel file. You see a link up here called Add Members to Set. I've used that before, and I don't quite understand how things are working with that link sometimes because it doesn't seem to like save my results. I do know that once you've added your file and you just go directly and click Save, that's going to launch a job automatically to do the process of adding the members to the set. So I often don't click that Add Members to Set at all. I'm sure it works somehow, but I've never quite figured it out. Maybe it was a little buggy because we were first using this process when we moved to the new Alma version, like the new UI version, basically. So after all of that, I have got my new set here, test creation of set from Excel MMS IDs. And if I click on the ellipses, I can see this option for members, which is slightly different than before. Remember it said results before, I think is what it said. So this time it says members when you've created an itemized set from an Excel file. So if you click on members, that's going to show you all of the members in your set. And I've got my 25 records right here. So I think that's everything. And I hope I didn't lose anybody in this, but I really appreciate your attention. And if anyone has questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. Yes, it looks like Christina has a question. Hey, Christina.
Hi, Mike. Thanks. That was a great presentation. I've been working with sets for a long time, but there was a lot of stuff I learned in there, especially taking the columns out of a big file. I just never thought of that. That's fantastic. Have you found a trick if you need to keep renaming? Like I might have a cleanup project where I want to say fix user expiration, and I don't want to keep renaming it each time. And I run into the limitation that it goes, you already have a set of this name, even though I don't anymore. That, and do you know a way around it? Like I go fix user expiration date 1, date 2, date 3, and it seems to be the only way, but maybe you know a better way.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've run into that and it drives me crazy. And I think I opened a Salesforce case years ago to ask about that. And they kind of gave me the answer of, oh, well, you just have to give it a new name. And I'm like, I don't want to give it a new name. I don't know why you're not letting me name it how I need to name it, and it doesn't exist. And you look for it, it's not there. But then I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think I don't have a good answer because it's happened to me. And the answer from Ex Libris was, that's just the way it is. So,
Well, it actually was a good answer because now I won't open a case because you already did.
well,
Thank you.
I see a comment from Jen. I'm sorry, I've not been keeping up with the chat, so I may have to go back and catch up. But Jen says, I put dates into set names because I ran into that problem too. So yeah, we've got confirmation from Jen as well. So
And there are a few comments in the chat, but no open questions right now.
okay.
Hi, Mike. I have a
Hey,
question.
Tao.
Hi. Do you have a good way to manage those sets? Like, how do you recommend people periodically delete or purge their sites? We have so many people create sites, some in their private folder, some in the public folder, and the sites can become more quite long. The list of sets, like 20, 50 pages. So is there a better way? Do we need to clean them up, or what's the practice in your institution?
What I do, and I think I'm kind of the main one who creates sets and uses sets. I've probably over the course of our Alma time have created over 350 sets or so, and I've deleted a lot over the years too. And what I do is I often will just create sets with just a single record in them to test a larger process. And I will create a set just for that single record, test it. If it works, I'll go for the larger set. So I tend to delete those single record sets right after I use them. About maybe once a year, I'll go through all of my sets. That's that first tab on the left. And right now, I think I had 132 active sets in there. But over the years, I've gone through and just said, well, this project is, 3 or 4 years past, we're not going to use these sets again. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those. I don't go through actively and look at other people's sets that create them, and kind of certainly don't delete them without consulting them first. I think for us, if I didn't show it on my presentation, but that far right tab, I think we have like 700 or so active sets for University of Tennessee. One of us needs to go and probably clean up some of these things, but again, not a really good method that we have. It kind of goes back to when I said that it's good to have as descriptive names as possible in your set, because sometimes we've got sets that say set for cataloging, or acquisition order numbers is a set name. It's like, what is that? What does that mean? I like to have very descriptive names. That way you're not having to drill into each set and then running it and even looking at the search criteria to find out what it's pulling from. It's good to have names like, I created this set for Joe Ferguson on this date, to show that, okay, this set is specifically for Joe. I can go to him and ask him, hey, do you need me to keep this set around, or can we get rid of it? So yeah, not a really good method perhaps that we have, but I feel like it works pretty well to kind of keep it to a somewhat manageable size.
Okay. Yeah, we just as an institution, and it's hard to, I can manage my own set, but everyone create a set and save it in the public domain. And it's just sometimes kind of out of hand. As an institution, we want to control and don't want to control, but we want to keep it clean, only keep the absolutely set you need to use.
Yeah.
And I do see on the chats, someone, Christina,
yeah,
there is a cloud app to delete sets. That's great, and I will try that, because I also noticed you have to there's no batch delete. Every time you have to click and check and just individually delete individual sets. there's no way you can delete all the sets created before this date by this person. So I will look into that cloud app to see whether we have that.
Yeah, it works really
Automation.
nicely, almost like too well.
Okay.
I got kind of ambitious and I was like, oh, well, there's someone that hasn't worked here in 5 years. I'm going to delete that set, but I didn't know people were still using that set. You be careful.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you
mentioning that, Christine.
mentioning.
I think I remember seeing that now, and I thought, gosh, I need to figure out, how I can start using that and how we can put that app to use, because I think it would be helpful, very helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you. How many people here have ever combined two sets into one? That's a really helpful tool as well. I've used that trick, and it's a really nice feature of sets. Are there any other questions?
Well, I think this has been pretty good, Chan. We do look forward to hearing from you in the future on filtering and more advanced stuff, I guess.
Great. Thanks everyone for your patience. And I apologize. I'm used to giving talks in person, and I feel like I'm not a bad technology person. I've been in library technology for a long time, decades, and I don't know. I'm working on a little laptop, and sometimes just the little things kind of slow me down. But I appreciate your patience, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mike.